CODA is an acronym. Child of Deaf Adult tells a pleasantly familiar coming-of-age tale, following a talented small-town girl from modest means with dreams to study music in the big city. In Gloucester, Massachusetts, Ruby Rossi, 17-year-old, is the only hearing member of her family. Her parents Frank and Jackie and older brother Leo are all culturally deaf. She assists with the family fishing business and plans to join it full-time after finishing high school. Heder is quick to give us a realistic taste of Ruby's routine. Accustomed to being her family's sign language proficient interpreter out in the world as the only hearing member of the Rossi clan, she spends her days translating every scenario imaginable. When the hearing world becomes cruel or belittling, she steps in, almost with protective instincts, always prioritizing them over herself. Because of her family, Ruby is seen as an outcast at school. When she notices her crush, Miles, is signing up for choir, Ruby impulsively does the same. Choir is run by Bernardo Mr. V. Villalobos, who orders the students to sing "Happy Birthday to You." Faced with having to sing in front of the class, Ruby panics and runs away. She later returns to Mr. V and explains that she was bullied for talking funny as a child. Mr. V accepts Ruby back into the choir, telling her there is room for all kinds of voices. He is later surprised when he hears Ruby sing and realizes her voice is beautiful. Mr. V pairs Ruby with Miles for a duet at the upcoming choir recital. Their first rehearsal goes poorly as they each prepare separately. Mr. V insists that they get together on their own to practice. Ruby invites Miles to her house to practice, but they are interrupted by Frank and Jackie loudly having sex in the next room over. Ruby later hears classmates in the cafeteria mocking the incident behind her back. Miles apologizes and tells her he only told his friend Jay, who in turn spread the story, but she wants nothing to do with him. She eventually forgives him and they resume their practice while kindling a relationship. Meanwhile, Frank and Leo struggle to make ends meet with the fishing business as new fees and sanctions are imposed by the local board. At a board meeting, Frank stands and announces that he is starting his own company to get around the new restrictions and sell his fish on his own, inviting other local fishermen to join in. The family struggles to get the company off the ground, relying on Ruby to talk to people and spread the word. But when Ruby joins the school choir and discovers her talent for singing, Mr. V encourages Ruby to audition for Berklee College of Music and offers her private lessons to prepare. When she decides to apply to Boston's Berklee College of Music, adopting a rehearsal schedule, Ruby joins Mr. V for the lessons, but becomes increasingly busy helping her family with the business. It throws off her balance and puts her at odds with her family. Mr. V grows irritated with her constantly being late and making excuses, canceling their lessons. He chastises her for wasting his time and accuses her of not caring enough about music. While fishing one day, when Ruby was unavailable, Frank and Leo are intercepted by the Coast Guard after failing to respond to ship horns and radio calls. They are fined and have their fishing licenses revoked for their negligence. They appeal and manage to get their license back on the condition that they have a hearing person on board with them at all times. Ruby announces to the family that she is foregoing college and will join the business full-time. Her parents are supportive, but Leo reacts angrily, insisting that they can manage their own problems without Ruby's help. Ruby's family attends her choir recital, and while they cannot hear her sing, they notice the positive reception from the audience around them. That night, Frank asks Ruby to sing a song for him while he feels her vocal cords, growing emotional. The entire family then drives to Boston with Ruby for her Berklee audition. They are not supposed to enter the audition hall, but they sneak up to the balcony to watch anyway. Ruby is nervous at first but gains confidence when she sees her family. She signs along with the song so they can understand what she is saying. Some time later, Ruby is accepted to Berkeley. She shares the news with her family and Mr. V, who are all excited for her, before asking Miles to visit her in Boston sometime. Meanwhile, the hearing workers in the family's fishing business have been learning sign language, allowing them to communicate with and interpret for the family. I felt that audiences would really see deaf people in a film. There are so many levels for people to identify with, and for people with no connection, who have never met a deaf person, to see sign language, to see deaf people in normal, day-to-day settings. People think that deaf people are monolithic in terms of how they approach life. And this film bursts that myth. Ruby's friend Gertie drives her to Boston for college. As her family sees them off, Ruby signs "I really love you" to them as they drive away.